Chapter 2, A Reminder of the Past. Saul Dugress. After everything that had happened, I am still amused that I have chosen to remain steadfast and kept my vow to stay with the Emperor. This promise which I vowed to the former Emperor Northsam Mendel Amark's general bound me to always serve whoever bore the title Emperor, and yet, seeing Wind act the way he does makes me wonder if it was all right to break my promise altogether. I have tried to influence Wind's decisions and to guide him to the right path, but most of the time, he would do an entirely different thing, if not the opposite of what I would counsel him. I know that my conscience is intact and that I have done well in my task, but remembering what had happened almost 2 moon turns ago in the forest leading to Nivedon still gave me shivers. Did I really kill Emperor Amark? And if I did, does that make me a bad person? I hardly got any sleep last night as these thoughts continue to haunt me. Wind is back in the Kanelan Palace, and I have just started hearing about the things that he has been doing while he was away. I was certain that half of what I have heard were fabricated stories embellished with grandeur as they traveled from one mouth to the next, but still, it put him in a bad light for searching for the last dragon's egg. He could not have been wasting his time going on such a wild hunt. He should not have. Does he truly believe that his empire was nearing collapse that he would resort to such thoughtless actions? No one in Akea believes the existence of the last dragon egg, and yet, there he is, looking for it. I wish I could put an end to this. Akeans need him to solve their problems and not glorify an ancient past when dragons roamed the lands. Times have changed, and the age of mysticism has long passed. There is only one thing that Wind wants, and that is to rule Akea for as long as he can. If I could help him with that, I wonder if he would be content and put an end to all this madness. I have always used my power to support him, and I would keep on doing so. The problem is, uprisings have sprouted about. There is news of them in provinces where I least expected them. Talks of tree runners taking over lands have reached me as well. There are so many things happening all at once that it has become quite challenging to track altogether. While the tree runners and some generals remain loyal to the Emperor, how many have already defected? How could they, now? My power has always helped me whenever there was trouble brewing, because I could bring peace if I wanted to. It did not matter who the enemy was. If I speak, he will listen. And now I wonder if it is right for me to win over more allies for the Emperor. If I do that, I should be able to convince Wind that no one would be interested in taking the throne from him. I must begin my journey. I believe there is still a way for me to help Wind, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that. This would be my last chance to win him back. Once he is all settled as Emperor, he would have time to remember how it was for us before life became too complicated because of his unquenchable thirst for power. The door to my room opened, and I was caught off guard. I stood up in a rush. "Who told you to?" I stopped mid-sentence when the silhouette by my doorway moved towards me, and the light from my room touched the Emperor's handsome face. His silver eyes glittered in the dim light. They were cold, and yet, they were also beautiful. "There is something that I need to show you," Wind, the Emperor of Akea, said. He called out, "Miroe, come here." A tall, lanky lad well in his teenage years came into view. He had dark hair, which he had tied quite untidily. A long scar stretched from the outer corner of his left eye down to the left side of his lips. "This is Miroe Pasap. He is my new man-shield," Wind said. I tried to remain calm, but this was preposterous. Another one of his bad decisions yet again. He is entrusting his life to a lad. What would this boy know about fighting, let alone defending an emperor? "You cannot be serious," I said. He laughed. He usually does this when he is confident about a decision. "His power knows no boundaries," Wind said. His eyes were still glinting. I recognized that it was from excitement. My eyes fell upon the lad again, wondering why, if he had such potent power, I did not remember him. Was there an Akeen wine festival that I had missed? He likely would have presented about 4 moon turns ago, and by then, I was already in the Kanelan Palace. No, I was certain that I would remember not only his face but also his name if he ever displayed power with such strength, so much so that it would excite Wind. "What power does he possess?" I asked. "You will be surprised," he said. He turned to Miroe and gave him a curt nod. "Let us amuse Lady Solarin," Wind added in a mocking tone. The lad paled, but he nodded. His lower lip quivered. He turned to me, and as I gazed deeply into his eyes, I was reminded of a memory, but I could not put a finger on it. I waited for the ostentatious display of power, but the lad just stood there in front of me. His lip quivered slightly some more, his nostrils flared, and his eyes squinted, but aside from these facial movements, there was nothing else. I was beginning to get impatient when all of a sudden, a sharp sensation crawled towards my heart. It was like a force that gripped my heart. My eyes popped in shock upon discovering what power this lad possessed. I could almost feel his invisible fingers as they slowly squeezed my heart. I gasped and clutched at my chest. "Wind," I croaked, wanting him to command the boy to stop. But he just stood there in front of me. His eyes never left my face, and there was a curious glint in them. "The dark heart," Wind said. I couldn't believe it either. I wasn't even looking for it, and yet, when my supporters started rebelling, here he is, submitting his allegiance so willfully. Everything truly has a right place and time in Akea. His voice sounded so calm and without any trace of panic. I began to worry if he would allow this lad to kill me. "What are you going to do about the lad, my lady?" He crouched down so he could look me directly in the eyes as I struggled to remain standing. I could hardly breathe anymore. "Stop it, Wind," I said in between breaths. Wind just stared at me without doing anything, as if he found it amusing to watch me die. Was he truly this mad? My face flushed in anger. Wind would not command the lad to stop, and if he did not, I could die soon. Tears streaked my cheeks as the pain of betrayal hit me. All these moon turns that I have served him, and still, he tests me. Emotion as cold as ice burst inside of me, and I was able to pry the invisible fingers gripping my heart. I then twisted it and hurled it away as I screamed in agony. With my energy spent to its fullest, I fell to the floor gasping for breath, and when I was able to stand up, I did so to protect myself from the lad should Wind order him to attack me again. The lad had been thrown to the other side of the room. I walked briskly towards him with arms raised, and this time, I was the one touching the lad's heart. "Do not ever do that to me again." I yelled at him as tears continued to streak down my cheeks. I was shaking. With my power, I never thought that I could be one whose composure could be broken by anyone. "My lady," he murmured. "You are hurting me." This close to him, I could see his young face as it twisted in agony and realized that I had been dousing him with a calmness that was enough to send him to sleep for a month. That must have caused a lot of hurt to someone with his power. I let my hands fall to my side, still in disbelief at how my facade of serenity had crumbled down so easily. Just as I thought, Wind began. "Powers that are controlled by the mind can counter each other." Wind's voice sounded pleased, and I wanted to hit his crazy, egotistical head. "With you and Miroe by my side, I wouldn't even need the crafty dragon's egg. It would be good to have it. Still, the two of you may be enough for me already." "Get up, Miroe," he said. "A woman must not be able to beat you up like that." The sound of his laughter deafened me as he turned away. I sat on the floor, still catching my breath. My eyes were still unfocused, as though I had passed out and only came to. When I looked up, Miroe was the one standing now. His shoulder was covered in matted blood. He held out his hand. "I'm truly sorry, my lady," he said. "You must not apologize for following the orders of that crazy man," I said. I bit my tongue. Never have I spoken against Wind in the past, and it was not time to start now. I shook my head, disgusted with myself. He was still my emperor. Regardless of what emotions he evoked in me, regardless of what foul things he may make me do, I will still honor him no matter what the odds are. Besides, I hurt you too. But you must remember not to do that again because I know so much more about your power than you probably do, and I intend to use that knowledge to kill you, should I sense that you desire to hurt me again." Miroe looked appalled but quickly bent towards me and grasped my elbows before pulling me up. I swayed a little when I was finally on my feet. "No one has ever done that to me before," he murmured. "I've had moon turns of practice. Your power has not reached its peak, but I hope I won't be the one you would practice on for it to grow further." Miroe blushed. "I didn't mean to, my lady. I only want to serve the Emperor," he said. "Don't we all?" I asked. For the first time, I studied his face, and I was taken aback. This close, I swear I could remember Wind when he was younger. His eyes, jawline, and face with the sunken cheeks reminded me of Wind. I swear Miroe was the spitting image of wind when he was about his age. The wind that I fell in love with. This young man had dark hair, and his eyes were not silvery gray. I walked as far away from Miroe as I could, intending to escape him. "What must I do, my lady?" Miroe asked. All I wanted was to serve him. "Do not talk to me like we are friends. Find your way with the Emperor. But if I will tell you this, you need to wash up first. The Emperor doesn't take kindly to those who stink." He chased after me, and he held onto my elbow. "My lady, must I beg?" he asked softly. His voice sounded amiable enough, a stark contrast to the brusqueness of his actions after having attacked me. Perhaps he was not a loathsome creature. Perhaps there was a kindness in him that I needed to unravel. In serving the Emperor, you must remember that he will ask a lot from you. Denying his request will mean your death. At some point, you will be bound to choose between what you believe in and what he believes in, and if they are not the same, what must you do then? His gaze never left my face, but he did not answer. Even with the long scar on his face, he looked so vulnerable, which was so ironic considering the power he had. He nodded. "I have not served anyone before. I don't know how to do it. How do I even begin?" "You heard the Emperor. He has made you his man-shield. It means that his life comes before yours. You must never lose sight of him. How will you protect him if you're not by his side?" I was unsure if it was my imagination or if the lad in front of me shivered visibly. He nodded. "I will do what I must, my lady," he said. He opened his mouth as though wanting to say something but instead closed it abruptly. He turned around and walked away. He stopped so quickly that I almost bumped into him. "I don't know where to go," he said shyly. "Oh, don't be so timid. Come with me."